Tuesday, May 18th meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. We will start out with our roll call.
Okay. Mayor Lydia Lavelle.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Barbara Foushee.
Present.
Council Member Jacqueline Gist.
Present.
Council Member Susan Haven O'Donnell.
Nope, it's Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here.
Okay,
Present.
I'll make the change. And Council Member Susan Romaine.
Here as well, Mary.
Council Member Damon, is it Siles?
Siles, yeah.
Okay.
We know we knew Damon wasn't going to be here
Damon's not
tonight.
here. And then Council Member Sammy Slade.
Present.
All right, very good. Yeah, one way to remember Damon's name is to think like Siles. Okay, so we'll start out our meeting with a poetry reading. I saw Fred join over in the waiting room, so we'll bring him over.
Good evening.
Hey, Fred.
How's everybody doing?
Good, good.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share a really short poem tonight by a poet named Fadi Judah. He's a Palestinian American poet, and he wrote a poem called Mimesis, and I didn't know what that word meant, so I had to look it up. And it's art, literature. It's the representation, the imitation or representation of aspects of the sensible world, especially in human actions, in literature and art. So that is what that means. So I'm going to read this poem. It's very short. Mimesis. My daughter wouldn't hurt a spider that had nested between her bicycle handles for 2 weeks. She waited until it left on its own accord. If you tear down the web, I said, it would simply know this isn't a place to call home, and you'd get to go biking. She said, that's how others become refugees, isn't it?
Wow. Thank you. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks. It's Fadi Judah, Fadijoudah. He's an amazing, amazing poet. I would say his style is very much like Lucille Clifton in that he uses very, very clear words, but really heavy and important subject matter.
Thank you. No, thanks for sharing that. And you told us a few times it was short, so we knew it was going to be short, but great. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, so I have two proclamations. And so I think the first one I'm going to read the Public Works Week proclamation, Mary, if you want to bring over Joe or anyone else from Public Works. And then after that, I'm going to read a proclamation recognizing Carrboro High School. They won the men's team tennis championship this weekend. So, hey, Joe, good to see you.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good. So this proclamation is entitled Public Works Week. Whereas 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association. And whereas the theme of this year's Public Works Week is Stronger Together, as stated by the American Public Works Association, and encourages people to think about the role that public work plays in creating a great place to live. By working together, the impact public works employees and residents can have on their communities is magnified and results in the ability to accomplish goals once thought unattainable. And whereas public works employees focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the town of Carrboro. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of all public works employees, who are responsible for planning, improving, and protecting our town's stormwater management system, construction projects, solid waste system, vehicles, streets, public buildings, parks, greenways, cemeteries, and other structures and facilities essential for our residents. And whereas it's in the public interest for everyone in the town of Carrboro to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in our community. Whereas despite the unprecedented challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, our public works employees continue to perform the myriad essential services that allow our town to function. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Lady LaValle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through 22nd as Public Works Week in the town of Carrboro. I urge all residents to pay tribute to our public works employees and to recognize the vital contributions they make in protecting our health, safety, and quality of life. This, the 18th day of May, 2021. There you go, Joe.
Very nice.
Thank you so much for the work that you do and your staff does. I mean, that list kind of said it all, really, of everything that y'all do.
Well, thank you, Mayor LaValle and council members, Mr. Manager. We appreciate the kind words and the gesture of the proclamation. And just really want to shout out to every public works employee. Every single one of the staff that we have is very dedicated, as you saw through this pandemic, where they really rose to the occasion in some very challenging times and at personal risk to themselves in various situations, and stepped up and did what needed to be done. And in the end, we came through together. So thank you to each and every one of them, and thank you for your recognition.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we needed our public works folks last year. So
Sure.
very much, always do. So we really appreciate it. All right. Moving on then, folks, I'm going to read this proclamation here recognizing the Carrboro Jaguar men's tennis team. We spoke with, thank you, Mary. We spoke with the coach today to kind of iron out some of the details in this proclamation. And I hope that the members are able to watch this on YouTube or see it online or something. And then, of course, the proclamation will establish tomorrow as their day. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Whereas the Carrboro High School Jaguars tennis team is coached by head coach Jeff Arthurs and assistant coach Brennan Nicole. And whereas the members of this outstanding Carrboro tennis team are the following: Keon Pickles, Aiden Chung, Tyler Herndon, Wesley Haynes, Jonas Miyagawa, Francisco Bonenberger, Callan Barrich, Tristan Reed, Connor Nicole, Joseph Lee, Jonathan Bador, Basil Fages, Jaden Mealy, Alexander Vaziri. And whereas the 2021 Carrboro High School Jaguars tennis team was undefeated in the regular season, and whereas the Jaguars won the North Carolina High School Athletic Association 2A Team Tennis Championship at Cary Tennis Park on Saturday, May 15th, 2021. And whereas the Jaguars had 4 qualify, which was the maximum allowed, had 10 wins between them. Aiden Chung was the singles champion, Jonathan Bador and Colin Barrich doubles runners-up, Jonas Miyagawa and Connor Nicole doubles semifinalists, and Wesley Haynes was the singles quarterfinalists. And whereas Jaguars Jonathan Bador and Callan Barrich defeated Jackson Brown and Saris Venkat from Atkins 6-2, 7-6, 7-1 to win the doubles draw. And whereas junior Aiden Chung defeated Shane Swindell from North Lenore 6-0, 6-0 for a decisive win in the singles draw championship. And whereas junior Aiden Chung is to be recognized as the recipient of the Most Valuable Player Award. And whereas this council is extremely proud of the accomplishments of these student athletes. And whereas with just one senior graduating, the council hopes to be congratulating these Jaguars in this manner again next year. Now, therefore, be resolved, I, Lady LaValle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 19 as Carrboro Jaguars Men's Tennis Day. I urge all residents of the town of Carrboro to take every opportunity to congratulate these players and their coaches for their remarkable achievement. This is the 18th day of May, 2021. So shout out to the Carrboro Jaguars. Awesome, awesome work. So yeah. All right. Very good. Let me turn it over now briefly to Barbara. Barbara, you wanted to make an acknowledgement?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lavelle. So some of you may have heard already that Chair Renee Price of the Orange County Board of County Commissioners, her father passed recently. And I did want to read a couple of items from an article that she shared about him. He was a retired police captain in Rochester, New York. He was the first Black officer in Rochester, New York. And he worked his way up the ranks from detective to captain. He worked security for both Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X whenever they came to visit in Rochester. And Charles Price was his name. He retired from the Rochester Police Department in 1985. Rochester Mayor Lovely Warren released a statement on Monday. And I quote, "On behalf of the citizens of Rochester, I extend my deepest condolences to Captain Price's family, friends, and colleagues. We are eternally grateful for his service and for leading the way for others to follow." So in honor and in memory of Chair Renee Price's father, and she also lost her mother last year. So it's just been a trying time for her. So if you're so moved, reach out, a few kind words and thoughts. And for a brief moment, I just want to say, I feel like I'm in mourning today. I actually feel like, I've been in mourning for a while. Yet another Black man's life is lost to police violence. For just a moment, I would like to call attention to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and the district attorney's decision not to prosecute the officers involved in the murder of Andrew Brown. Please stop killing us. When I say us, I mean Black and brown people that look like me. Black and brown bodies are falling with little to no accountability. My prayer and my hope is that there will continue to be sweeping changes to policing and our criminal justice system with increased transparency and accountability. Andrew Brown's life mattered, and his family is without him today. And I just want us to think about that, for a minute. His family is without him. And this is just, yet another Black person's life lost to police violence. And I just, I just really felt like I needed to say that today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate your second round of remarks as well. I knew you were going to talk about Renee's dad. Just reflecting on that, what a man he was. But thank you for sharing with us about that. Appreciate it. So, Sammy, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. I just also wanted to thank Barbara for those words. I think it's just crazy that we continue to see this happening, and for it to be hitting in North Carolina. Obviously, it's hitting home on so many levels. But I would also like to recognize what is happening beyond our borders. That is also a legacy of how we've treated people, and how this country has been founded on genocide and uprooting people from where they are. Specifically, I'm talking about the settler occupation of Palestine and our complicity as a country in supporting and providing armament, $3 billion every year for that. And this is occupied people, and hundreds of people are dead now. And people talk about Israel having a right to defend itself, but we forget that Israel is the aggressor in this instance, and they are occupying land, and it's apartheid regime. So I'd like to make that connection, as a lot of people are nowadays making these links between who we are historically and how we continue to be, and try to change that. But it's recognizing our history and how it continues in the current day, through which how we're going to be able to extricate ourselves from that. So I just wanted to be conscious of that. And again, thank you, Barbara, for raising it.
Thank you, Sammy. Jackie, Randy, then Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sammy. Barbara, I wonder if if it would be at all helpful, even if just symbolically, and I believe in symbols, for Carrboro to pass a resolution decrying the failure to prosecute and sent that. I'm thinking if more people start speaking out, that pressure starts building. And we've always been good at being kind of like the first drop in the bucket with lots of things and thinking, oh, it's just a drop in the bucket, and then the bucket fills. What do you think about that?
I'd like to just jump in real quick before Barbara answers. If Barbara and others are so inclined to take on doing something like this, obviously it needs to take place sometime the next week and bring back next week or whatever. So just, I wanted to kind of throw that out there, but I'm interested in hearing what Barbara has to say.
Thank you, Mayor Lavelle and Councilmember Gist for that recommendation. I'm not writing anything. And I'm at a point now, it is symbolic and it is a good symbol. And I don't say that with any disrespect, Councilmember Gist. I appreciate you raising that. But I'm reaching a level now where I'm looking for like some real action and working towards, steps. Some of the things that we're even contemplating here in Carrboro, those things matter to me, and seeing those through, at the policy level is what I'm looking at right now. And I don't mean any disrespect, Jackie.
Oh, I know you don't. You don't.
I'm really emotional about this, and I don't need any extra weight on me.
I'm not asking you to write it.
I'm just saying if it was even going into consideration. But if you want to write one, I mean, that's fine. But thank you for asking me. But that's just how I feel about it.
Okay, I hear you. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Barbara. And I think it kind of goes back to some of the discussion we had around some of the resolutions we've already passed about policy and action is what we're trying to do here in Carrboro. And that's a model, and I hope. Let's go Randy and then Susan.
Barbara, thank you for all the sharing, and I didn't realize about Renee's dad. I had talked to her about her mom, and I had no idea about her dad this last week. But I think what's poignant here is when you talk about his service to the department and the security detail that he had. And then when you, when you pair that with the murder of Anthony Brown, it's mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. And I think that's, I just appreciate the poignancy of that juxtaposition of Charles Price being the first Black, did you say detective? I just think it's absolutely, it just shows the complexity of the challenge that we face, and specifically, the challenge to Black officers in a organization and a structure that is that really struggles with equity and justice, and they cover for one another. So it only makes me feel more just impressed with the life that Charles Price had and the service that he gave. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Randy. Susan.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Barbara and Sammy, excuse me, for your comments tonight. And I know that both Elizabeth City and the Middle East are weighing heavy on a lot of hearts in Carrboro right now. Barbara, I was hoping, and I probably others are the same, hoping to get the mailing address for Renee And I don't know if you have it or if there's a way I could get it. Does somebody have it and we can share it?
You have it, Randy? Randy, if you don't have it, I was gonna say Kathy could get it, but Randy can share it with us.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay,
Great. And then I just missed one thing when Barbara was speaking about when her mother died. And I gather that was recently, but I didn't quite hear.
Yeah, it was about a year ago, I think, right, Barbara, when her mom passed? Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so moving on then, y'all, to announcement of upcoming meetings, Mary.
Okay. Tomorrow night at 7:00 is the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission. And also tomorrow night is the Board of Adjustment at 7:00. And on May 20th is the Planning Board meeting at 7:30 p.m. And also on May 20th, the Transportation Advisory Board meeting at 7:30. And then next Tuesday, May 25th, will be the next Town Council meeting at 7 p.m.
Okay, I have a couple things. Let's see. Tomorrow morning is the Visitors Bureau Board of Directors meeting. And then I believe on Thursday morning, I have a Chamber Board meeting. And then, of course, our second round of the Freight Train Blues is on Friday night again, online, great music. Second of, I think, 5, 6:30 today, beginning at 6:30. So tune into that. Anyone else? Let's see. Sammy?
Yes, Orange County Climate Council meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. And then also, I believe there's a 5:30 Carrboro Connect meeting Thursday, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. Can someone confirm that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is. David, we can have Trish confirm if there is one.
I know there was a Carrboro Connects meeting last Thursday at 5:30.
Okay, so scratch that. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right, very good.
It's hard to keep up with all of them.
It's endless with Zoom too. It's just crazy keeping up with stuff. Okay, so Mr. Manager, I think we're on to the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. There are 5 items on the consent agenda. The first item is approval of the meeting minutes from May 4th with amendments as offered by Councilmember Romaine. The second item is the Fire Department monthly report. The third, the Police Department's monthly report. The fourth item is the monthly stormwater utility report. And the last, of course, is economic development, the monthly report. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to ask someone to pull the minutes. I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. So
minutes.
You're pulling the minutes? Okay.
I'll move everything else.
All right, motion.
I need to pull number 5.
Okay, so motion for 2, 3, 4 by Sammy, second by Susan. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Okay, so then we have number 5, Barbara.
Yeah, so I had emailed some questions, I think on Sunday, that I was waiting for a response to, and either I missed the response or there hasn't been one. So I didn't know if I needed to bring it up in the meeting, or if John was even available to answer the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Fushi. John is available. I don't know if he's got an answer
there he
yet.
is. Okay.
But
Hey,
John, are you able to answer that question?
I have not had a chance to take a look at that yet. But I can, if it's okay, Mayor Pro Tem Fushi, if I can reply by email, if that's acceptable.
Can we pull the item till next week?
Barbara, I'm so sorry. I'm catching up because I was out of town and I'm digging through 1,000 emails. Can you remind me what this email was about?
Yeah, so it was about John's report. So I had a couple of questions about the BIPOC businesses and their engagement with the CBA, and also about these two unique businesses that John mentioned. And I was talking about this type of unique business model being able to flourish because those two businesses it was determined that they would have to operate on private property. So I was just assuming that was because of our current land use. And I was just commenting that I hoped, somewhere in our comprehensive planning process, that it would be addressed in a way that this type of unique business model, which a lot of those are popping up, and Randy can attest to this for one, that will allow these types of unique businesses to flourish instead of kind of being blocked off by our current land use. So that was the second one. And then, the first one, the BIPOC businesses and the CBA engagement. And I understand, that John is busy, and I get that. And this is not time sensitive. And so for John, I'll wait. I can wait for John. And I don't know if that would be something that would hold up the report being accepted or not. I'm fine either way for everybody. What do you think, Mayor?
My suggestion is let's go ahead and move the report. And then I really appreciate your second point about the private property and that kind of thing. It seems like that's a longer range kind of thing with this comprehensive plan. And then with regard to the first point, John could just follow up with us about that, I think. So yeah, I would go ahead and move the item, Barbara.
Yeah, I can move number 5, and John, I'll just wait for you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. And then Susan, is that a second?
That's a second. And also I was hoping while we have John here, I could just ask a really quick question. John, just on Friday, Governor Cooper kind of took us all by surprise by rather abruptly sort of lifting restrictions around COVID, including making face coverings optional in a lot of settings. At the same time, I know that our local businesses can continue to require masks if they so choose. And I was just curious, what is the feedback you're getting from local business owners? Are people has this created a lot of confusion among patrons, or are people still just kind of coming anyway to grocery stores and restaurants with their mask? I was just sort of curious the overall feedback you're getting on the new order from the governor.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Many businesses in Carrboro are very hesitant to lift their own mask mandates for their businesses. There was a email thread that came through on Saturday morning that was discussing what other businesses are doing. So businesses were talking with each other, and I anticipate that most of the businesses in Carrboro will remain or keep a mask mandate for indoor activity, at least for the foreseeable future. Likely the next month. Some of them are waiting for some of the vaccine percentage to increase before they're more comfortable. As you mentioned, this was kind of taking everybody by surprise. So, our businesses are holding the line. I mean, they're pretty much all in agreement to phase in, returning back to normal. So, our citizens can expect that. I would say most of our businesses will be requiring masks for indoor activity if they're doing indoor. Some have chosen to keep their indoor closed as well. So,
yeah.
Good. Well, thank you.
Thanks for that.
The message is bring along your mask wherever you go.
Yeah, bring it along with you. I've kind of heard the same thing anecdotally, John, that our businesses are kind of still pausing, still waiting, but still kind of, I don't know, it's another step. It's another step along the way. And so we need to continue those vaccinations. Yes. So, all right. So we have a motion by Barbara, second by Susan for item number 5. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And Jackie?
Aye.
All right. Very good, y'all. All right, on to other matters, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Your first item under other matters is a request for a minor modification to the conditional use permit for the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel, which is proposed for 390 East Main Street. And I believe Marty is going to present the staff report. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Hello.
I'm sorry. Hang on just a minute, Marty. Randy's your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question about the order of this, and I'm putting this out here now because I don't want us to get caught up afterwards. The second item is on EV charging stations, and as this item 1 involves a discussion of parking, I want us to be aware that a decision that we make on this item 1 could get caught up with item 2. So I'm putting it out there because we may want to reverse the order, or at least acknowledge that there could be a relationship between what will be decided with the EV charging stations and how it affects this temporary lot.
Marty, have you given thought to that?
I have not had a specific discussion with other town staff about that. My reaction would be, as noted in the agenda item, we as a staff, if this is approved tonight, are still going to be working out the details, both related to the final version of the lease agreement and the construction details for the parking lot. So we could take direction from council as to how the parking lot is designed in that regard.
And I think, if I remember right, is my memory about the EV charging stations one that we would still hear it tonight, have a public hearing, but we wouldn't, staff would come back to us with that before we would adopt it, or was that something we would adopt tonight? Can anyone answer that?
I need to have Trish or Tina answer that. I want to make sure I don't tell you the wrong thing.
Okay, that's all right. You don't need to worry about it right now, but just for them to consider that, for them to think about that. But I appreciate Randy's question. So, Barbara, your hand's up.
Yeah, so my hand is up about the minor modification to the CUP. And so the word that jumps out at me is temporary. So this parking we're talking about is temporary, right? We're not even moving into the Hilton Garden Inn portion because they're not ready.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I hear you. So I think maybe what we should do is let's hear a little bit from Marty about it, because maybe what you might be getting at is, if it's temporary, then how would the next item affect it or not affect it? But Marty, with that.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So Marty, why don't you go ahead and take it away, and we'll just kind of remember what Randy said. So.
That sounds good. If you'll give me a moment, I do have a brief presentation, so I just want to share my screen. Okay. Are you guys seeing the presentation now? Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so the Hilton Garden Inn is under a conditional use permit right now, and we are asking tonight for a minor modification. The site, so I have a site map here. This is the 300 East Main Street Plaza area. The Butler site is back behind here along the Libby-Cotton Bikeway and the railroad right-of-way. You'll see the old Butler building that has since been removed, so it's a vacant lot as we sit here talking tonight. And this is the first floor plan for the Hilton Garden Inn. I just wanted to reference this just to give you some sense of how the floor plan for the hotel, when it is built, will kind of fill the site. But as noted, what we're talking about tonight is a temporary use in advance of the hotel being constructed. So it is intended to be temporary and acknowledged as temporary. I will just breeze through these since it's essentially a summary of what was included in your agenda item. So the Hilton Garden Inn does still intend to build. We don't know the timing yet. It's at least probably 2 or 3 years into the future. So we feel like we can get some functional life out of this as a temporary parking lot. So the details are that it'd be a public parking lot during the day and under a sublease agreement. So the town would be under lease with the property owner, and under a sublease, the nighttime use would be for Cat's Cradle when they have events. So if they don't have events, they don't have events every night. So it would provide some public parking at night as well on occasion. The other thing that's proposed up for consideration is an outdoor concert series by Cat's Cradle. And the property owner has agreed to allow parking in the parking deck during the concerts. So with that, I'll note that the site plan and the plans you received show 110 spaces. Just to clarify what's in front of you tonight, the proposed resolution, if adopted, would approve the 62 spaces shown on the Hilton Garden Inn property. The remaining portions that get you up to 110 spaces total would be handled separately through an administrative process. They're on separate fee simple lots and administratively allowed. Parking is administratively allowed there. Questions were submitted by Councilmember Slade, and we provided an email response to those just before the meeting this evening. And with that, let's see. As I said, it would be brief. Jim Spencer is available if we need to bring him over to answer questions as well. And with that, I'll stop the screen share. I can go back if needed. And I'm available for questions, or Jim as needed. Thanks. And I would note, just to kind of reiterate, I guess, in closing, that it is intended to be temporary. So that might be up for consideration as well in terms of the EV discussion.
Thank you, Marty. Jackie.
Thank you. Jim may want to weigh in on these as well. Since it's temporary, I'm presuming we would be not paving it. Is that correct, Marty?
That's correct. That's one of the key components to it being temporary. Yes.
And have we had conversations with Main Street Partners about our leasing it?
You mean in the existing parking deck? Or do you mean for this?
If the proposal is that we lease this property and then we sublease some of it to the Cradle, correct?
Yes,
so
that's correct.
Have we had a conversation with Main Street Partners about leasing the property at the Butler?
Yes, John Hartman Brown, who was just on here, so I know he's available. He has been in discussions, so he may be able to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, I just that wasn't in the materials, and I thought, a piece is missing here.
Okay.
And the outdoor concerts that the Cradle's talking about having right now, this is just a couple. This isn't like every night outdoor concerts, right? This is just a couple.
That's right. The information provided was 2 to 4 a month. So 1 a week at most, probably. During the warmer months, there on occasion might be more than 1 a week. But yeah, we're certainly not talking about every night. They set it up as 2 to 4 a month to have a little flexibility in that regard. And
then
Jim Spencer
part of this has to do with the Cradle moving, correct?
That's correct. The satellite parking agreement for Cradle would serve their new location, not their existing location. That's correct.
One. The outdoor concerts, my only concern is how loud it could be. That there are people who live around that parking lot. And I know when the Cradle had concerts at the farmers market that we had noise complaints. So I think the types of bands would be important, and the times that they stop would be important. And there's a difference between several every week and 1 or 2 a week or 1 a week. I mean, because it is loud, and I don't want us getting complaints about that. So I think the number of concerts would be important to clarify. I don't mind doing it. I think it's good for the Cradle, but it can't be we have to strike a balance between everybody's needs. But I do like the idea of using it. It's great that we could have it as a parking lot during construction and to share it with the Cradle in the evenings. It wouldn't be exclusive. It wouldn't be anybody that's not going to the Cradle has to leave now, would it?
I'll allow Jim to speak to that as well as the timing. I know we did. I appreciate your comments. We did have some discussion with Jim and Cash Cradle representatives about potential noise complaints and contacting immediate neighbors at the very least. So
well,
I know Jim is on screen now.
Telling people it's going to be loud is real different than not being loud. They're
Yes.
not the same thing. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk to Jim.
While we turn it over to Jim, Mary, I'm having a little technical glitch. I can't seem to make my screen stop sharing. If you can do that as host, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Jim, can you go ahead and we can hear from Jim about Jackie's comments?
Sure. Yeah, thank you guys for having us tonight, and for considering what we think is a very important issue. That I think the bottom line is that in the current ordinance situation we're in, where we need parking for the Cradle's Brewer Lane location that's within 1,000 feet per our text amendment and all, this is a great solution, and we're really grateful to 300 East Main for providing a location where, while this lot is not being developed, it can be used for this use. And so I think that works really well for us. And again, it is a temporary fix for what we need. It's going to be largely a gravel lot. We will have accessibility on the lot for people to be able to get to the Cradle in that. With regard to the concerts, Frank's goal really here is to be able to kind of reintroduce people to going to shows outdoors. And I think it's a great intermediate solution where he can have some concerts this summer potentially. There's some big bands in play that are all local bands, but they're national acts and can play here this summer. The idea is, I think, to have 1 or 2 shows a week for the summer months. Probably some weeks it'll be 1, others it may be 2, but I don't think we'll get much above that. And the idea is that I think largely, yeah, Jackie.
Yeah, I think, one of my questions was the type of music and the hours, because I know in the past when the Cradle had some particularly loud, heavy music at the farmers market, that was problematic for a whole lot of people who lived around there because the noise really carries.
Yeah.
And so, the Butler parking lot is not isolated, and people would be able to hear. So I think the type of music, consideration, abiding by our noise ordinance. We have a noise ordinance, and the hours would all have to come.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Marty might have. I don't know if he included, but we had kind of agreed with the town that there would be some restrictions on the timing of shows, and I think they have in mind largely afternoon and late afternoon shows, but they probably would end up with there might be some bands who would want to play a night show, but we had kind of written in our proposal, I guess, to you guys that on weeknights that would end and by 9 o'clock or by dark, and then on weekends, Friday and Saturday only, potentially by 10, so that it's not a Cradle show like normal that would maybe end at midnight. It would be ending by reasonable hours. And I think it's likely that it would end earlier, but he does want to keep flexibility. There's a couple of bands that have other big venues booked this summer, but would like to kick off their retouring by playing in Carrboro, and they are bands I promise you that. But they play here and get it restarted. So we limit it, and we do have specific restrictions for the times, and there is one.
We could also have restrictions on the volume. I know that that's kind of anathema to some people, but I think, you can control volume. And if it's
Yeah.
going to be outside and into the evening, you don't have to turn it all the way up.
Yeah, I think I think that's doable. I will point out also that the way we've got it planned is that the stage would be at the cradle end on the western side of the site in the smallest part and be facing towards the parking deck, kind of away from the, Roberson neighborhood there. And I think it's going to be, they're going to make efforts to control that. Obviously they want everybody to be happy with what's going on. So I think, that would be a thing where we'd have a band shell of some sort that would focus the music towards the deck and not towards the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for that. Let's go on to Barbara and then Susan.
Thank you, Jackie, for asking, because as I was reading through that item, I was thinking like you, about folks, that might, live close enough to hear the music and what that was going to be. So I also read that during the week there was, I think it said 9 p.m. and on the weekends, 10 p.m. I believe is what I read in the agenda packet. So I'm thinking about our noise ordinance now. If somebody could remind me what that is saying. I mean, of course, we have to adhere, to that pretty much under all circumstances. So I don't know. Somebody, Mayor Lavelle, are you looking for that, or you're looking at something else?
I was looking to see if Chief ATAC was in the other room, and he's not.
Yeah, that was just something I was bringing up in addition to what Councilmember Gist was saying. I certainly want to support Cat's Cradle and what they're trying to do. But we have to do the holistic thing. We're looking at the complete picture, and certainly where it's indicated on the map. There are adjacent neighborhoods, to take into consideration. So if we could just kind of check into the noise ordinance and see how it aligns, with what we're trying to do for Cat's Cradle, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Barbara. Let's go on to Susan.
Thank you, Lydia, and Marty and Jim. I just want to say I am really excited about this project. I see it as a little bit like our library at the 203. The live music is really going to bring a lot of people downtown. And as they come downtown, especially as we come out of the pandemic, our local business community is desperate to have that additional, people coming downtown and not only hearing music, but also hopefully, buying dinner and spending some money with our local businesses while they're here. So let me begin. I have just a few questions. Let me begin with Carrboro United. I talked to somebody from Carrboro United just the other day, and they're very happy where they are. But the truth of the matter is they liked being in, I think it's fair to say, they miss sort of the more central location in Carrboro. I'm not sure if you heard that as well, John, but I was curious if I don't even know the long-term prospects of Carrboro United as we come out of the pandemic, but at least for the short term, would the parking lot be a possible location for Carrboro United to return to?
I think we could, well, I'll defer to John. I was just going to say, I think we could explore that, but we'll see what John has to say.
I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, we can certainly take a look at it. I don't know that this parking lot is probably well suited for that. The design that we're looking at really limits the inflow and outflow of traffic there. So,
a little too hidden.
But that's something we can definitely work with those folks and explore. And maybe there's another opportunity in town to look at incorporating them somewhere else.
Thank you. Another question I had is, during the concerts themselves, would there be opportunities for food trucks to be there? I don't know if there would be space available for them, and I don't know if that would be meeting zoning requirements.
I think we could explore that as well. You know, the nature of our ordinance related to food trucks essentially says you can't take up space intended for a business, but as a public parking lot, well, when it's serving the cradle, you kind of are doing that. So let me think on that a little bit. And I might just say we'll explore that.
Again, just this opportunity, you know, to sort of boost them while we're boosting the music. I was also curious if folks can bring alcohol to the outdoor concerts.
Jim can speak to this a little, and probably a little more detail than me, but we have had that conversation with Frank, and it's my understanding that he's talked to the state ABC staff, and that you could bring a beer from the existing cradle space onto this lot during a concert. Do I have that right, Jim?
I think so. I think that the bottom line is that he would have to have all ABC permits in hand for whatever the situation was, whether it's brought from the cradle, or something else, or there's a beer truck from Carolina Brewery or somewhere allowed to be there. I think it'd have to be complying with all ABC state permits, and he has looked into that a little, and I think that would just be in place with the if the use is approved.
Mm-hmm. Final question. The weather, of course, is unpredictable, and I was curious if you have considered having all of this under a big tent, or have you ruled that out at this point?
I think the answer is probably no. In terms of that, I think that there will be a band shell set up that the band can perform under, and all. The size of this field, I think, would be they'd have to make a call, just like they did at Town Commons, on whether a show is a go or not, based on the weather and whether it's a rain or shine event or not. So I think there'd be a few enough of these events to where I think they would just be like, we're gonna do it, and maybe they would, if the event were in the afternoon, they could push it back a little if they needed to. But my guess is that there's a cost, there's diminishing return on providing a certain kind of facility for this site, and it would be like we're having outdoor shows or it doesn't work. So,
so I assume, Jim, that the performances are paid. I mean, folks pay. They purchase tickets for the outdoor performances.
I'm not sure about all shows, because there may be some where smaller local bands, like in a daytime festival or something, might be more of a festival type show where it's not. But I think for the main bands we're talking about, they would be paid, and probably just you buy tickets through the Cradle site, and there's some kind of admission point, and you get a wristband if you're old enough to drink, and that kind of thing, just like a normal outdoor show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. It'd be kind of like some of the shows they've had at Town Commons were like that too. Yeah.
Right.
Let's go Randy and then Sammy.
Yeah. I'm extremely excited by this. Oh my God, I have missed live music. Yeah, big time. So I'm likening this, Jim, to when the Cradle was doing like the Halo and other concerts in the front of the Cradle and Vicino. That it would be about that size. Am I correct in that?
I think so. I mean, the spaces are similar in volume. It's just simply that this space is under a different CUP than that space, and otherwise we would be just doing them like that. So I think so. I think you can potentially a few more people in the back because of the area behind the parking deck, but I think it's likely to be similar.
Yeah, I'm just taken with the creativity of thought that went into this and the potential. I think it's the kind of gathering that, we're all hungry for. And a shout out to Freight Train Blues for at least being virtual. But so I'm thrilled about doing this. I do know and trust that Frank knows exactly how to execute, meet the rules and execute the event. I just hope that, this kind of event works out in terms of noise monitoring. But I absolutely agree with you. If the band shell is set up in a certain way and the sound is directed towards the deck, I see it as being very possible that this is not going to interfere with neighbors as much as we anticipate. So thank you, and give my thanks to Frank.
Thanks, Randy. Sammy, and then I have a comment.
Thanks, Jim, for presenting this to us. I think it's a great solution for the cradle. Very exciting to have an outdoor space. And also, I'm very grateful to town staff for responding to those questions I asked yesterday. And I recognize there are a lot of them, and staff has a lot to do. I raise these questions because I totally value what's being proposed here in terms of an outdoor space for music, but I don't want to miss an opportunity in terms of maximizing surplus parking that exists in the parking deck. And so a lot of my questions are in regard to studies that we've done of parking and that show specifically the public parking for the deck is empty at times, including from 6 to 9 at night. And so my hope and my question for the council, and maybe no one's had a chance to look at it given that we got responses at 6:30 today, but the materials show, if you look at it, that we have excess parking, including to support the parking that will be displaced at the 203 site. One of the reasons we've claimed the need to lease the 300 East Main parking deck, public parking, after the time that we initially had committed, which was to support that development, was the claim that we needed to have it for the 203 parking displacement. And so if you look at the studies, they show that there's more than 100 spaces available in just the public parking portion. And then also they show that of all the parking in that deck, patrons that go solely off site represent 13%, which represent one level of the parking deck. We rent 3 levels plus another one. So in essence, we are paying for parking for the 300 East Main because only one level really supports beyond that, which represents, if there's 75 parking spaces per level, 150 parking spaces that either are empty or that we are paying for 300 East Main. And Cat's Cradle needs, I believe, 60, according to the what's required for their new space. And so my question is, would it not be better for us to make a music park, so the Cat's Cradle can do the component which everyone's saying is very excited, this outdoor music space, and then maximize the use of the surplus parking that isn't being used, both by promoting it so more people know about it, but during nighttime hours to sublease that to the Cat's Cradle, so they are accomplishing both their goals as they're proposing for this design that Jim's presenting. And so my first question, I guess, is to Jim. Is there anything that Cradle would find problematic with that? Is there some reason why parking in this outdoor space is preferable than parking within the deck, assuming that we would be able to sublease that to the Cat's Cradle when it's in need?
Sammy, before we hear from Jim about that, I have a response to that, and I think other council members might too. I mean, I don't know.
I just want to hear first if there's a perspective from the cat's cradle as to whether there's any reason why that wouldn't work.
Jim, do you have any comment?
Well, I really appreciate, Sammy's perspective on this, because I, tend to agree with him about parking issues in the town. I would say that, our thought was that we've had some conversation with 300 East Main about use of the parking deck for parking as was kind of originally intended by the CUP on that project, and it doesn't, it makes some sense, other than the fact that if that space is occupied by another tenant or someone else later on the process, then the current ordinance in Carrboro doesn't really allow us to use that space. If it's all public space and the town's willing to use that down the road to make up that difference, we're all for it, because we want to consolidate parking and we want people to be, taking up as little land area in Carrboro to be where they need to be as possible. But right now we're working with them that Frank's under after a year of delay on getting started with the project, we're under a time crunch to get started. And in the current ordinance situation, we feel like we need to make sure we've provided the parking that's required by ordinance for the club. And so if there's any reason why our spaces aren't able to be specifically used for that, then we need another option. And since this lot, they offered it and it was already kind of used as a parking area under the former use as a garage, we were like, it's a good way to kind of get everything accomplished at once. We'd love to see the deck as used more at night for this, but I will say there's also potential tenants and in the spaces that we vacate or that are still used that might use that parking as well. So it's a little bit of a administrative snafu that we're in, and we want to be able to use it, but we also want to be able to move forward. We've got our zoning permit hung up right now a little bit on this parking issue, so we want to move forward with construction, knowing that we have adequate parking for now and for the next few years secured. So however y'all want to do it, we just need to get our zoning permit, and we thought this was potentially a good double use of the space.
That sounds good, and I'm glad to hear it's a matter of getting the parking, not necessarily which specifically, and if it happens expeditedly, then that would be preferable. And so we do have a ready-made parking deck there, and it really is upon us to make that decision or not, whether we want to sublease the empty spaces that are available or not. Both will accomplish your goal of expediting the process by addressing the parking issue.
Yeah, I want just one follow-up on that, as I know you guys are going to run long here, but I just want to make sure that you understand that right now our zoning permit is dependent on having adequate satellite parking for the project. And so like whatever decision you make has to, either we either get that or we're held up. And right now, like getting to construction is important for us.
Totally understand. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. And I appreciate those comments too. And then I have a few questions for Marty and or Jim. But the way I kind of look on it is we know, and we've talked about this, ad nauseum, really, right? But we're gonna obviously, lose our 100 spaces at 203, and we've asked staff to please try to find some, temporary parking arrangements around the town that we can use for the next couple of years when construction's happening. I don't see this as any kind of a permanent parking place, but I see it as a great short-term solution and a win-win for everyone. Notwithstanding these valid comments about we have to make sure folks know about the parking deck, the current parking deck, but also, as Jim says, those are eventually going to go away to some degree as more tenants take over in 203. But I kind of view it as a domino game of being able to kind of, accommodate our businesses and the parking that we know we have right now for a while construction happens. Marty, one of the questions I have for you, though, is a question from an email that I see here from Heidi, from Heidi Perry, talking about a couple of questions related to the Libby-Cotton bikeway that's right behind the Butler complex, and asking about having ADA access points from the bikeway into this parking area, and having extra signage, maybe having a better bike rack behind Cat's Cradle, hopefully that people will bike to these concerts, right? And then adding bike parking maybe behind Oakleaf. I don't know. There's good thoughts, I think, here that she has sent along. I'm not sure if other folks got a chance to look at this or not. And Marty, I'm not sure if you or John have gotten a chance to see that, or even Jim, but I think those are all really good considerations if we look at this place as a spot to have, like live music. I don't know if any of you wants to respond to that.
I'll mention that we have discussed ADA, and Jim has included in the plan ADA connection to the bikeway that would essentially allow someone to make it all the way to the cradle at grade, since the bikeway, the Libby-Cotton bikeway, goes right over to where the cradle is. I don't believe, Jim may correct me, but I don't believe we've talked about bike parking per se. So Jim, if you have any reaction to that, I mean, we could take direction as a staff with respect to it being a public parking lot, but Jim may want to speak to bike parking for the cradle more broadly.
Yeah. So Jim, I'm not sure if I know you haven't, I don't think you would have seen this, but, suggesting replacing the rack behind Cat's Cradle with one that's a little bigger, maybe a minimum of 10 bike parking spaces, maybe adding bike parking behind Oakleaf, just thinking of areas where we can add more bike parking if people are going to be riding bikes to kind of listen to music. So maybe you all can consider that in terms of lease agreement, as you kind of negotiate the contract, Marty and Jim. I think that those are pretty good suggestions.
Yeah, I totally agree with those suggestions. And, I think that, we have some bike parking on the 300 East Main site, but I think we're more than willing to also add some. The plan, and just to briefly summarize that, we're planning to use the parking pad that from the old Butler building as part of our accessible parking area, and then have a paved accessible path to the bikeway from there, which we could easily kind of just pave a little additional space, off that for bike racks that would be kind of on site and close to the path, so people could, lock up their bikes there during a show. I don't think that's any problem. Obviously, for a temporary lot, we don't want to go too crazy, but I think that's an easy thing to do. And we're happy to expand it a little behind the cradle too. I think people come to where they know they're going. So if we can put some on the parking site itself, I think that would be the most useful.
Mm-hmm. All right. We'll okay. Of course, the ones at the cradle and Oakleaf could stay even after the parking.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not planning on taking any of those away. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. It looks like Barbara's hand's up again, and Sammy.
If I may, just before we move on from that topic, sure. The Cat's Cradle will have a bike parking requirement as well related to the zoning permit. So they'll have to meet that on-site, satellite, one, the other, or some combination. So there will definitely be some level of bike parking mandated by ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to mention that we'll have covered bike parking on the Brewer Lane site, as well as some off-site parking as well. But that we have 12 bike parking requirement for the capacity of the club, and that will all be on site.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Marty. Let's see, Barbara, then Sammy.
So thank you, Jim, for all the things that you just said that you would be willing to do as a part of this minor modification. As far as bike parking and bike racks and things. And so going back to Heidi's email, I wanted to ask Mayor Lavelle, are some of these items a part of the 300 East Main extension? Some things that maybe should have been done and were not done, and we're still trying to get them done? Would you?
Yeah. Let's go. Let's have Marty respond to that, Barbara. That's great. The original CUP for the entire project may have included some of this, but it was part of a build out, I think. So is that right?
Oh, I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Fouché, for reminding me of that. I had not thought of that. We are under this 6-month extension, limited extension that council gave to 300 East Main for their permit, specifically related to improving parking, bike parking. So we can certainly bring to their attention this discussion as it relates to whatever happens tonight, whatever the decision is. So thank you for that.
And actually you're bringing up the Butler one there, Marty, but I was even thinking of the original Main Street project one too. So
that's what I'm intending to reference.
Yeah. Got it. Great. Thank you. Let's see, Sammy.
Yeah. So I would just want us to be very clear in regard to Heidi's request that staff look at both the extension that Councilmember Fouché's reminding us about and what's currently proposed tonight, and allocate what she's recommending to the appropriate processes. I know that the community is very interested in that connection on Oakleaf, making sure that they follow through with that, and the bike parking for the development generally, which they promised but have not been implementing. So if staff could actually look at Heidi's email and incorporate those requests or recommendations into the appropriate processes, that would be great. The other question I had is in regard to, I know that when we were doing the parking deck where the library and town offices are going to go, we couldn't do any improvements because they would trigger town code requirements. And I'm wondering to what degree, what the threshold is on this proposal we're considering tonight in terms of improvements that are proposed, and whether, for example, stormwater runoff, tree canopy standards, and whether they would be triggered by what's being proposed.
Yes, I wrote in the agenda item, and I'll say a little more about it here, that the intention is to treat this similar to the 203 project, knowing that it's temporary in nature. The fact that it's public is how we end up, allowing with an allowance for it to be gravel rather than paved based on the number of spaces. And similar to the 203 project, we're just trying to find a way to make functional use of the parking lot without expending something. I don't mean to sound negative in terms of planting trees, but if we plant trees knowing we're going to have to tear them out in just a couple of years, it seems like not necessarily the best use of town resources, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Marty, when you talk about the 203 project, you basically mean what's there now?
That's what I mean. Yes. Thanks for
a few years.
Parking.
Right. Okay.
But in terms of putting trees in, that wouldn't make sense, but taking trees out is being proposed. And again, I think it's another reason for why it behooves us to consider using surplus parking that we already lease to make this a park instead of a parking lot. And if we're serious about really making our downtown amenable for people to walk to and bike to, we want to create the spaces that would make it nice for them to be there. And I think it will be a sad missed opportunity if we don't look at the data and our actual experience of this parking deck and recognize the empty spaces there, and take the opportunity to sublease these to the Cat's Cradle so they can meet what is required of them for the ordinance. And then we could accomplish a much more amenable space for people to enjoy than a parking lot. So I don't know if anyone here has had a chance to really look at that data that staff provided. It was provided a half hour before this meeting. I would like to request that we make a decision on this next week to allow for time for people to look at that information, digest it, and consider what I'm suggesting we should do.
Thank you, Sammy. Does anyone want to respond to Sammy, or does anyone want to make a motion, or looking for some movement by anyone here with regard to whether we should keep this as a park or whether we want to entertain this modification.
Well, oh, sorry.
Jackie, I see your hand up, and I saw Susan, and I saw Randy.
I think we need to move ahead with this. And as much as I love parks, I think that we really need, what we're looking at is substituting parking that's going to go offline. And our businesses desperately need that. Yes, a lot of people can ride their bikes or walk here, but not enough that can sustain our downtown businesses. So I don't want to make downtown a parking lot, but I also don't want to make it I don't want to make it a ghost town either. I think what's proposed to us right now is very sensible, very responsible, really good for the whole downtown, good for the music community, and took a whole lot of time and effort. I like the idea of increasing the amount of bike parking there, and the more we can encourage biking and walking, I'm all for it. I don't even own a car, but not everybody that comes downtown is capable of walking or biking here, and our businesses need those. So I understand I understand where you're coming from, and I also understand that we have to replace the parking that we're taking offline, and this is a brilliant way of doing that and making it a dual use property. So I'd like to move. I would like to move the item.
So that's a motion for the resolution to approve the minor modification. Second by Barbara, and then I have Susan with comments, and then Randy with comments.
Yes, I really appreciate what Jackie says, and I agree. I think it's just a very unique opportunity for us to jump at this. Again, it is temporary, so and the fact that it is temporary, it fills this need at the 203 project. Providing that parking without having that long-term commitment. And also, Jim, I want to say I appreciated in some of the background and material that was shared that it's very timely for Cat's Cradle that we move forward with this in terms of the schedule, bringing in some outdoor performances and locking in those bands, sooner rather than later. And so I too would be ready to move forward with this.
Thanks, Susan. Randy.
Yeah. Well, I love Sammy's idea of a music park. I'm thinking, I hate to say this, Sammy, but I think one of the places that I would put it maybe is at Twin Creeks Park or someplace where you really could have a big venue. I'm just saying that because I really feel like having a music park would be great, or maybe even using Anderson in that way. I appreciate Jackie for reminding us that this is not additional parking so much as it's addressing the parking need that we will have as things move forward with 203. Additionally, and probably most important, this came out of the need the Cradle's going to have, and the fact that it is temporary. So with that, I agree with, I guess Jackie made the motion and Barbara seconded.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'd like to see us take the vote.
All right. So Sammy, go ahead and respond, and then we'll take the vote.
Yeah. I just find it really sad and unfortunate that we're not looking at the data. I'm not saying let's not replace the parking that is being displaced at the 203. What I'm saying is the data says that there's plenty of parking to both supply the 203 and the Cat's Cradle needs. And doing what I proposed wouldn't decrease the timeline for what the Cat's Cradle does. If anything, it would accelerate it because you wouldn't need to be taking out trees. You can make use of the existing space in a much more ready way. So I find it very unfortunate that we aren't looking at the information staff's provided a half hour before this meeting to inform the decision that's being made tonight. And for that reason, I cannot support this. I think there's a much better alternative.
Thank you, Sammy. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Sammy?
Nay.
Barbara?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's going to be aye, but this appears to me that it's time sensitive. I guess, Jim. Time sensitive item, correct?
I think it is time sensitive.
Yeah, that really both moving ahead with our zoning permit and booking bans for this schedule are very time sensitive.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. That's what I thought. Okay, aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thanks all. All right, so we're moving ahead then to the next item, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
to see everyone.
David, are you talking? If you are, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Oh,
We can hear you now. We can hear you now. Yeah, there we go.
okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so the next item is a public hearing on text amendments to the land use ordinance establishing requirements for EV charging stations.
Good evening, everyone. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and share my screen for a quick presentation.
Thanks, Tina.
Okay.
Okay, let's see how that did.
Okay. Okay. Good evening again. Yes, this is a public hearing to consider. Oops, sorry, I'm having some difficulty advancing. Here we go. Okay. Good evening again, everyone. Just a little bit of background again. So this is a text amendment which is coming forward kind of on the request of the Environmental Advisory Board, who as part of their kind of work on the Climate Action Plan, has encouraged developers over the last maybe year or so to start including EV infrastructure to development projects. And so as part of that effort, they've put forth a request for a text amendment to the land use ordinance that would actually add this as a requirement, EV charging stations and EV ready infrastructure for parking lots for new and expanded developments, 50 that would have as a requirement 50 or more parking spaces. And just to be clear, this is for both commercial and residential projects. There was a recommendation or a suggestion during the request to set meeting on April 20th to add similar requirements for EV facilities in the common areas of residential subdivisions. So we've added that as well. There's a draft ordinance in your package for consideration, and it includes, these new definitions, the requirements, as well as signage and pavement markings. So we'll jump right in. The new definitions would include both the EV charging stations, and we've broken those out with the 3 levels just for clarification. The requirement would actually be for level 2. That is what's at Town Commons now, or Town Hall. There was quite a bit of discussion about this at the advisory board, in case that's something you want to talk about after the presentation. A little bit of clarification about what is really an electric vehicle versus just a hybrid or a green vehicle. The new recommended requirements are spelled out in this sheet here, both for the charging stations as well as the EV ready stations. And I'll just jump right into it. The additional information here for requirements for EV infrastructure and residential subdivisions. The 15 or more dwelling unit acre threshold's been identified because that's the requirement for open space recreational facilities. So those are projects, residential subdivisions that would likely be large enough to have a common area where there be parking spaces. And so that's why this has been set up the way it has. This went to the advisory boards earlier this month. Their comments are in your packet. I don't want to speak for them, but I might draw your attention to some of their comments because they offered some potential revisions that you may wish to discuss. The focus of those comments, and I highlighted those in the abstract, have to do both with the provisions around the ADA parking to make sure that ADA parking spaces weren't lost, as well as potentially increasing the requirement for EV charging stations. And then there's some other more nuanced remarks in their comments. So I'll stop with there, other than to offer just kind of an update on the legislation that I had noted during the request to set. A quick check has revealed that I believe that's now in the Senate, going through committee. So that's still, and that was the legislation related to whether local governments could enforce a prohibition about parking in an EV space when you are not charging. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Board members, any questions, comments, thoughts about the ordinance and or this alternative language that was proposed regarding the ADA charging spaces? Let's go Barbara and then Jackie.
Yeah, so Mayor LaBelle, thank you. And thank you, Tina, for the presentation. So yeah, I am interested in clarifying clarification around the number of non-EV ADA spaces to make sure that they are not reduced. And this was a recommendation that came from, I believe, our planning board. So that's something that I want to lift up early in the conversation.
Thanks, Barbara. And I should mention that we have at least one person from the public signed up to speak on this. It's Bruce Sinclair. So he might be speaking to the same thing as well. So maybe, Jackie, after we hear from you, maybe we can go ahead and bring Bruce over and hear from him. So go ahead, Jackie.
My only question was about the preferred parking spaces for green vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And on the surface, I like that. But then when I think about it, green vehicles are expensive. And I'm wondering if people who can't afford a hybrid car, if they're going to be disadvantaged. And I'm concerned about that. We keep trying to be a welcoming community to everybody. And yet if we're saying only hybrids can park here and you pull up in an old pickup truck or an old Chevy, because that's what you own, are you going to feel unwelcome? So it's not that I don't agree with the impetus behind it. And I'm fully supportive of the EV charging stations, but I'm a little concerned about the preferential treatment for cars that are out of the reach of some people, of many people.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Jackie. Let's, is it okay if we hear from Bruce, y'all, before we keep talking? Is that so?
Lydia, a quick question in regard to Jackie's point.
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand from staff whether, my understanding is there's a definition for green vehicle, but I'm not sure, or maybe I missed it. There's anything specific about designating spots for green vehicles? Is that in this proposed ordinance?
Thank you for that. The clarification was just that those cars would not be considered eligible to park in the EV charging spaces.
Which cars wouldn't?
So hybrids, battery powered cars, or maybe biodiesel cars would not be considered candidates for parking in these parking spaces.
So what are preferred spaces for green vehicles? Could you explain that a little more?
Probably. I'm sorry, Tina, go ahead.
I was going to say, so this really doesn't identify preferred parking for green vehicles. The definition was included for folks to understand that those vehicles were not eligible to parking spaces. It was to distinguish a true electric vehicle versus some of the hybrids.
So why does it say in addition to preferred parking spaces for green vehicles?
That was it because it was supposed to, well, that may be something that we should write if that isn't clear. So thank you for
Because
that.
I mean, that definitely says to me that there are preferred parking spaces for vehicles.
Well, I think in some places there are, but that would.
I mean, are there here? Because that's confusing. If we don't have preferred parking spaces for green vehicles, then maybe it should just say green. These spaces are not for the use of green vehicles or something. But
okay, thank you.
It's unclear, and I don't want to discriminate against people who can't afford to buy a hybrid. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for having Tina clarify that, y'all. Mary, can we go ahead and bring over Bruce, who I think is in the waiting room, and we can hear from him as part of this public hearing. Hey, Bruce, I see your name. We can see your name. There we go. Let's see. There you are.
Okay.
Hello.
Can you hear me also?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead and start whenever you want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this has been a kind of a tortuous path here to get this through, but I really understand and appreciate all the input of all the other boards and the town council who helped only make this better as it moved along. And I really look at this as low-hanging fruit to show how Carrboro is truly committed to green infrastructure and reducing our carbon footprint. And I really hope that in the next 10 or 20 years, this may become a no-brainer for anybody doing a development, that this would be automatic. But I think it's a good, highly visible way of, and pretty low cost for the town to just start the demand and start pulling electric vehicle use into our town. I think one of the best arguments made were by one of the planning board members who said that they have out-of-town guests who have electrical vehicles, and when they come here, they have no idea where they're going to park to charge it. And I think that the presence of these vehicles will help bring those people from middle range areas into town to visit relatives who have if they have an electric vehicle. That's about all I really have to say. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But I just think this is a really good thing for our town, and hopefully it will show our commitments.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. We appreciate it. Does anyone have a question for Bruce right now before we let him out? I see a couple of hands up. Now this is just regard to a question for Bruce. So I see Susan's hand up, and I know others don't have a question for Bruce, but it looks like Susan does.
I have a question specifically for Bruce, and then I'll wait my turn. I had a couple questions for Tina. And actually, this may be a question for Tina as well. So I'm curious, this requirement about if there's 50 spaces or more, we'll set aside 3% of the spaces for the EV charging stations for cars. If we have 50 spaces or more, I was wondering about requiring a charging station specifically for e-bikes. Or if not a charging station specifically for e-bikes, a charging station that would have a lower power outlet that could be used for e-bikes and e-scooters and even electric wheelchairs. I have no idea. I mean, I Googled just to get sort of a rough sense. It seems like these charging stations for e-bikes are like $750 range, but I'm just curious. I would love to do this, but I have no idea whether or not this is affordable. And I would be curious your ideas on Carrboro trying to do this, Bruce.
Well, the way I understand it is this wouldn't be at Carrboro's cost. This would be at the developer's cost. So, and as far as e-bikes are concerned, they can, the charging post can be adapted to charge both bikes and cars and run on several different, level 1, 2, or 3, depending, they aren't just single function charging devices.
So the ones that would be purchased, they would already be able to provide, they would already be able to charge the e-scooters, the e-bikes. Would they also charge electric wheelchairs?
I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. That's all I needed to know.
All right, great. Thanks, Susan. So Bruce, I think we can let you go.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. No, thank you for your comments. All right, so let's go. We've got Randy and then Sammy and then whoever else.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, for bringing up the e-bikes. I was going to ask about that. And Bruce, if you're still there, thank you for answering that. They can have adaptable charging stations that can charge them. I agree with Bruce. This has taken a long time to get to where we are. I do think that this is a way to expand and kind of push beyond what is right now a nascent frontier. I think we're ready to be here, and so I feel like this goes with several other items we've talked about, whether it's the bike share program or a program of bike leasing at the library. And I want us all to just, each time something like this comes up, I would like to be sure that we're thinking of the holistic picture and how many different ways that this interfaces. So with that, I'd like to move attachment. I think it's A.
Are you so the motion? Let me get a second, then I'll ask a question. Is there a second? Okay. Second by Sammy. Are you wanting to make this suggestion about the ADA parking space?
Yes, absolutely. So, and I, so yeah, I think Heidi made some recommendations about
well, here's in the abstract in terms of the ADA.
Yeah.
Possible alternative language includes requiring a charging station adjacent to an ADA parking space,
right,
or reducing the requirement from at least one ADA charging space when there might only be 2 charging stations to 1 EV charging station in an ADA space for every 5. So we just need to kind of come up with an agreement on that ADA language. Let me see. Maybe Sammy, who seconded it, has the suggestion.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I just want to express a lot of gratitude to the EAB, who's really worked on this and brought it to us years ago. A lot of the members who, including Bruce, who brought it to us, aren't even on the EAB anymore. So thank you. And then thank you to staff for putting it together. In terms of the EAB did have a conversation about the ADA and recognized we didn't really want to tie up a charging station exclusively for ADA use. And so I like the first suggestion staff is proposed is AJ next to an ADA space. So an ADA vehicle could use that charger and it would be reserved. The alternative might be requiring an ADA space with an EV charger, but not requiring it solely for ADA parking. But I think staff's proposal accomplishes it pretty nicely. So I would offer that as a friendly amendment, the first proposal that staff has made.
So Randy, that's a friendly amendment to have the provision about requiring the charging station adjacent to the ADA parking ramp. So
Yes, I think that that's appropriate. I also just want to say, because we do not have the information from Tina, and Tina, we just don't know about enforcement, that be something that we look at in future, that we make, kind of note that that's something that, dependent upon what happens in the Senate, we'll be able to respond to.
yeah. It's, I mean, in any event, it will be on private property. I mean, right. So
Lydia, I'm sorry, I didn't.
go ahead, Sammy. Yeah.
I still had a few more things to point out. The EAB also pointed out that, or maybe it was the planning board, the term circuit is specific to, I think, a line that goes to the charger. And in the industry, people have been describing ADA ready to include panel capacity as opposed to circuit. I think that should be changed. It's another friendly amendment. It's under section 1.3. And the definition of electric ready vehicle includes the installation of a dedicated circuit.
Okay.
And it should say a panel capacity, installation of panel capacity and underground conduit.
So Tina, do you see where replacing dedicated electric circuit with what Sammy said? Or do you understand where he means to replace that language?
Under the definition for EV ready,
Yeah.
dedicated circuit to.
Yeah, is that the only place where it has that, Sammy?
I think so. Panel to change a dedicated circuit to panel capacity. I believe that's the only place.
Okay, so that's another friendly amendment. Randy, are you okay with that?
Yes, that's in the comments, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
And
Okay.
then the other thing that we discussed about with the EAB was the 3% versus the 50% 50 spaces threshold. And they were recommending having it be around like 3%, 33 spaces would mean one space. Staff's proposing to, at a minimum, provide 2 spaces beginning at 50. But if you use 3%, 3% is really 1.5 spaces. So one way to get to the same thing would be to say 4% of spaces starting at 50 is 2. And then you wouldn't have kind of this low trough, because as you increase, then you're still at 2 when you should be bumping it up progressively as you increase. So 4% would accomplish both what staff is suggesting at the 2% threshold. I mean, two spaces minimum for 50% and above, and what EAB was proposing on aligning the percentage to what we want.
So Tina, do you have any response to that? Any concern about making the 3%, 4%, as it would still result, I guess, in the 2, and it would not result in the 1.5, I guess, if it's below 50?
Yeah, I also noticed that the percentage of 50 spaces did give you kind of a half space. So and part of the reason why it seemed to make sense, since the 3 advisory boards had similar comments, but they were all slightly different. I thought, rather than my taking it upon myself to start making edits, it was better to just bring it as it was and let you all discuss. So that's why. So I'm happy to get these comments from you now.
Okay, so Randy, do you understand the third friendly amendment from Sammy is to say EV charging stations shall be installed in at least 4% of the spaces rather than 3. It ends up still with that minimum of 2, but it doesn't leave you with that 1.5.
Right.
You got rid of the minimum language.
Sammy, now that's interesting, because I was looking at it and thinking, well, instead of being 50 spaces, what if it was more like 30 or 35? In other words, reducing the number of spaces to which the 3% applied. I think the EAB.
That's what they recommended.
Right. So if let's think this through, which way does it work more? Which way is it better if it's only 35 and you're going with the 3%, or expanding it to 50? Because to me, if you're shrinking, and this I think was EAB's thinking, if you're shrinking the number of spaces that you're applying it to, in terms of developments, it may have a, you may get more out of it.
So I'll change my friendly amendment to what the EAB is recommending, which is keeping the 3%, bringing the threshold down to 33.
To 35. Yeah.
35.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So that third one, we're clear on. So Randy, so we switched what Randy said to what Sammy said to what Randy said for that third change to your motion. Okay.
Right.
And
all right.
The last comment, sorry, Lydia and everyone.
Okay.
Last thing I wanted to just mention is just to underscore what the planning board mentioned, which is that electric vehicles will be increasing significantly over the coming years, and that they believe EV ready 20% is maybe not enough. So either we bump that up tonight or we revisit that very soon.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. And I agree. I mean, I think we should revisit it. Maybe we can make as part of our motion that we want to revisit this in 2 years, or I don't know. So we've done that with some other ordinances that we've passed to kind of cause us to kind of reflect on them again. So Randy, do you want to add in this? Actually, let's vote on this ordinance with the changes that we made first, and then let's make that.
Okay.
So we have the motion by Randy, the second by Sammy, with, I believe there were 3 changes to what was proposed. And Mary, I want that. And if you didn't quite get all of it, you can let us know or watch the tape, or maybe Tina, did you get the 3 different? Okay. Very good. So we'll go ahead and take a vote on that, except I see Barbara's hand up. Barbara, do you have a comment about this before we go on?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to Sammy's first friendly amendment around the language for the EV ADA spaces. So just trying to make sure that the number of non-EV ADA spaces are not reduced as we are going forward. And I think it's not, based on what you said, correct? That's okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Barbara. All right, so let's go ahead and vote on this draft ordinance then, or this ordinance. Oh, actually, we don't, right, Tina? Because you have to take it away and bring it back, and we're going to vote on it at a. Okay. So do we want to? At this time, do we want to go ahead? Well, I guess when we get it back, y'all, let's make a motion at that time, once we adopt it, to review it again, like in 2 years or something. So it'll come back to us maybe in a week or 2 on consent or something. Do you think, Tina?
Yes.
Can you include that as part of the resolution? Do you mind that we would want to revisit it in 2 years?
Okay.
That'd be great. Okay. All right. I'm closing the public hearing then on that text amendment. So, all right. Good discussion, y'all.
So Mayor LaBelle.
Yeah.
Mayor LaBelle. So we have 3 more items and closed session, or 2 more items in closed session?
We have 2 more items in a closed session.
We believe we're okay for time?
Yeah, I mean it's 10 till 9, so let's keep rolling. Cool. I know Kat Lazorko's out there, and she has that last item, which was really interesting, a lot of information. But let's go ahead and roll through this next one here, if we can, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The third item under other matters is consideration of proposed text amendments relating to dimensional requirements in the B1C and B1G districts and permit requirements for town-owned and operated facilities. And looks like, I think Marty has this one, or Tina, I'm not sure.
I think this is mine. And if you don't mind, I have just I think a 3-slide presentation just to go over the key pieces. Okay. Oops. Wait a second. Sorry, I have too many PowerPoints open. Let me stop sharing for just a second, make sure I have the right one up. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, good evening again, everyone. This is just a quick recap. You all have been receiving updates from staff and from the design team about the 203 project. And And part of that has been monitoring the project to see if any text amendments might be needed for compliance for the project to advance. And in November, in the public hearing, staff did identify the possibility of 2 or 3 text amendments that would be needed. During the request to set and then on to the public hearing here in the beginning of February, draft text amendments were presented to you. The main one really is this first one right here that has to do with establishing a new height maximum for parking structures. And this would be in our 2 main downtown business districts. When this went to advisory boards, there was some strong recommendations from all of the groups, if I recall, to tweak that language just a little bit so that solar collectors and other mechanical equipment would not be subject to that 60-foot maximum. So we've made that change, and I believe there's a tracked version in your packet so you can see that revision. The other item there, part 2, is not really something new. It's really just adding a sentence for clarification. The table of permissible uses lists that this use is allowable with a zoning permit in the B1G. So this is just to make that paragraph more clear. And that's the purpose for that second provision. There was also discussion as this project came forward, or as the text amendment came forward, about a potential third amendment, which was related to the tree canopy coverage. That was something we were working through the design. We weren't quite sure if that would be needed or not. Now that the design is much further along in development, it appears that that text amendment isn't needed. So that's been struck from what you have in front of you. So again, the public hearing was held in February. We have gone past the 24-hour public comment period. The advisory board comments are there, along with your consistency resolution and the draft ordinance. And I'll stop right there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Tina. I'm glad that the tree part was able to come out of that. Let's move on. Let's see if there's any questions or comments. Let's go to Sammy first.
Thanks, Tina. I'm just curious about the tree ordinance. In the abstract, it describes that staff determined the existing ordinance allows for some degree of flexibility. And I was just curious what the quality of that flexibility is. What specifically allows for that?
Yeah, the way that the existing provision, I can pull it up in the screen if it's helpful to look at. The existing provision allows a substantial, allows you to move forward as long as you meet, you substantially meet the requirement, which is 50% or more. That's the way we've been handling that word in the past. And you do these other things that are of benefit to the community. And those are things like solar and things of that sort. So the project does exceed that 50% or that substantial threshold. I think it's up to the latest review, 9% or 8% canopy coverage, which exceeds 50% of 15%. So it meets the substantial, and it does include some solar and some other others of those items. So it does appear at this point that it does meet the existing requirements in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
Thanks, Tina. So council members, if there are no comments or questions, we've kind of talked about this before, and I appreciate the inclusion from the with regard to the solar and the mechanical stuff. Then we could consider adopting the resolution for consistency and the draft ordinance. Randy?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment. Tina, I really appreciate your short presentation, because I found when I was reading through the strikeouts about the tree canopy, I was a bit confused. Thank you so much for going through this and clarifying. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy. Sammy, your hand's still up. Is that from earlier? Sammy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, that is from earlier.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion to adopt the resolution for consistency and the draft ordinance?
I'll move.
Yeah, I make a. Oh, Randy, go ahead. I'll second.
All right, Randy's making the motion for the resolution for consistency and the draft ordinance. Barbara is making the second. Those are attachments A and B. If there is no further discussion, we will vote on this. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
And Barbara?
Aye.
All right. Awesome, y'all. All right, Mr. Manager, on to our last item before we have our closed session.
Okay, Mayor and members of the council, the last item on your agenda before closed session is an update from Kat Lazorko regarding the Inclusive Carrboro Communications and Community Engagement Plan. Catherine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we go to Kat Lazorko, Mayor, I have a question. Did we go through? So there's 4 sections for the previous item. I know we did consistency, but we're supposed to do section 2, reasonable, and then the public interest, and approve, deny, and or were we just consistency?
Just the consistency for this text amendment. Is that correct? That's correct.
Yeah, I saw
Mr. Manager, that's correct, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so we didn't need the rest of it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So good evening, Kat.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So nice to see you tonight. I'm Catherine Lazorko, Communications Manager, and I'm pleased to present an update on the Inclusive Carrboro Communications and Community Engagement Plan. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay. So these are the areas that we'll cover tonight. Just generally some background about the plan, progress toward the strategies and actions of the plan, review of our communication channels, as well as priorities for 2021. And I'm going to try to move quickly. I know you have a really, you've already had a long night and you still have more to go. So this is a great slide and excuse to just show our beloved Elizabeth Cotton. But it also provides some background about the plan, which actually was initially adopted by you, the council, in 2017 as a communications plan. And then in August 2020, the plan was updated and adopted as the Inclusive Carrboro Communications and Community Engagement Plan, with new objectives and actions for how the town of Carrboro can increase access to information, resources, and civic processes by people of color, immigrant, refugee, and other marginalized communities. So there are 5 main goals to the plan. You have both a plan and a working document with detailed notes of various activities. I'm going to offer a broad overview. And I just want to mention that you may notice that some action items for our goals overlap, and that's completely natural. Also, I wanted to mention that goals 1 and 2 look nearly identical, but 1 is more about engagement, while 2 focuses on communications. So starting with goal 1, increase public awareness of and participation in town decisions. Here's a photo of our first town information center located in the Rocky Brook community. Of course, Rocky Brook was one of 4 town information centers funded through CARES Act funds. The first was installed in December of 2020, and we have 3 more today. Through Carrboro Connects and its special focus on outreach, we are collecting new strategies. 1 is the listening sessions. We have held 2 of these to date with members of our Latino and Burmese communities through Facebook Live with interpretation. Also, we are learning more about approaches for translation through meetings held with our community partners. I want to just pause to share an insight related to this photograph, and it's the relationship between communications and engagement. A real joy has been in being out and about in the community, talking with people and taking photos and discovering stories and just getting to know people. So what begins as engagement results in interesting stories, which I think is the heart of good communications. So I took this picture of some residents playing Dungeons and Dragons with safety in mind during COVID. And they were like the poster children for social distancing. And it was a great story on a number of levels. Engagement hasn't been easy during the pandemic, but Carrboro definitely did things out of the box. From Rec and Parks' virtual events to approaches like the Carrboro People's Photo Album. So the next goal is to increase public awareness of town programs and services. The big item here, the big project is the website redesign. And so currently we're gathering website analytics, visual assets, and organizing a team. You can expect us to return back to you with concepts when we're farther along. We're also organizing social media channels and tracking our data for new insights, and you receive numerous reports on those. There is a lot to report from this area, but some big takeaways are high Instagram growth and the new channels for YouTube, LinkedIn, and Visit Carrboro. And on to our next goal, which is create opportunities for stakeholders to provide feedback to the town. And of course, this is a screenshot from a Facebook Live listening session. And this is really in name and analytics focus area. We're collecting regular analytics from across all social media channels, and the data is going to help us make continual adjustments and improvements. In the graph that you see here, the numbers represent website visitors who are using our website with the aid of translation browsers. It is an example of a lot of the different data that we are collecting. Also, we're interested to repeat the communication survey that was done in 2016. I'm certain we'll have new questions to ask our residents. And then on to create internal systems to standardize and enhance the quality of communication created and distributed by town departments. And this is really a systems area, and we're looking at institutional systems. So currently we're developing infrastructure and guidance for staff to improve their ability to use various communications and engagement tactics and tools. Some of this takes the form of how-to guides. And you see an example here of a how-to post flyers guide that accompanies our emerging town information center network. This is how we create a sustainable and shareable program that all departments can benefit from. As soon as we try something, we employ it, we're going to document it and share it. It's not policy, it's not written in stone, and we can update and change it as we learn and move forward. Another note about systems area, which this general goal area also includes employee communications. And there is a plan to bring back the employee newsletter this summer when we can take a hiatus from Carrboro this week. So our last goal area is coordinate and standardize emergency communications. I just want to point out this little video really was a little 20-second video that really garnered a lot of engagement on social media. It was initially posted in September of last year, and then again in October, again in November, and then actually even in January, and garnered more than 1,000 views. And it's an example of taking something that's, it's localizing information, it's personalizing it to our community and they relate and they connect. And the message resonates much farther, I think. So it was an unprecedented long year of emergency communications. And through great collaborations, we put out a great deal of public information. Our health department attributed our county's consistently low COVID positivity rates to excellent compliance, which may speak in part to the efforts of public information officers across the county. It was also an exceptional year for large-scale events that required coordinated communications that are similar during an emergency. There was the 2020 census, general elections, the recovery plan engagement efforts, as well as race and equity planning through a countywide initiative. So, okay, these last slides will give a quick view of our official information network. How do we reach people? We have the town website, our email subscribers, social media channels, and signage that takes a variety of forms, including posters, banners, and yard signs. And then there's direct mail. And how are our channels performing? You have more detailed reports in your packets. This graph shows the numbers of followers, fans, and subscribers. Note that email is an opportunity area for growth. That is email and text combined, because people can sign up for town notices through either method. Our Facebook numbers are low. Instagram and Twitter are growing with exceptional engagement. And I just want to point out that the increase in followers on Instagram is not a typo. It really was 64% increase since July of last year, which is pretty remarkable. And as our town's median age is about 30 years old, it makes sense for us to continue our efforts on Instagram. Next door, the May 2021 numbers are correct, but I do want to verify the July 2020 number just to make sure that's correct. It seems high to me, but that is growing at a good clip and at a faster pace than Facebook, for example. So now this is a little bit longer here, and I'm almost done, but I like to get context by looking at history, and this is just part of background analysis. I guess what I'll point out here is that you can see this is the town's communication history that I've gathered. There may be other milestones that I'm missing. I think I tried to capture the things I thought were the big rocks. First website, 2000, that's only, 20 some plus odd years ago. Town Twitter and Facebook in this 2011, 2012 time period. Your beautiful Carrboro brand that we love was developed in 2013. In 2014, that is when your Civic Plus website that we're using now was developed. So it is older, it's ready for a redesign, which I've informed you that it will be happening. That's also the time when people could sign up to receive town news through email from the website. And then your transparency effort with the council email archive. So again, your communication plan in 2017. Interesting here, I didn't mean to skip over the loss of our local media, which is, really impacting everything that we're doing today. You lost the Carrboro Citizen in 2012, and then here, Chapel Hill News ceases publication in late 2017, like around December. So following year, you really smartly establish a communication manager position, and then a citizens academy, and also maybe your new manager established that Instagram account, which I'd like to thank her for. So, and then here we are in 2020. There's your inclusive Carrboro plan, and then all these amazing things some things that have happened due to the pandemic. The live streaming, the YouTube. Well, we launched the Visit Carrboro. We have a new multimedia library. I can tell you more about that if you're interested. It's for sharing visual assets. We started our weekly Carrboro email newsletter. And then now, here we are in 2021 with the website redesign coming. We have our town information centers in place. Maybe we'll do more, we'll see. And then established a town LinkedIn. If you haven't found Town of Carrboro on LinkedIn, I hope you'll check it out. We need more followers. So that's a quick overview of the communication history. And this is my last slide. Just in closing, a few priorities for the year ahead. Of course, the website redesign will be a major project. Next, we will continue to build infrastructure and systems through the communications team, training, and how-to guides. Lastly, I hope to cultivate a culture of authenticity and trust. We want to facilitate and support conversations and tell stories that reflect the Carrboro character and town issues. And in closing, I want to just say it's been a real honor to manage your communications over this past year. I hope to reflect and amplify how original this place is. And I think our plan is the roadmap to do that. So in closing, there's that dancing text. I'm happy to take your feedback and any questions.
Great. Thank you, Kat. Thanks so much for this report. And as you said, there was even a lot more detail on the agenda item. I particularly enjoyed looking at all the social media and all the statistics, all the top, kind of tweets, the top posts and so forth that garnered a lot of kind of activity. I mean, I'm going to let others speak here. I don't want to talk too much, but I do think, you have really amped us to a really higher level here with your posts. I mean, they're also really interesting and different and varied, regular. They're, as you schedule them appropriately, but you also are adept as times change or as emergencies come up. Council members, there have been a lot of times in the last year where we've had to kind of get something up quickly, and found it also really awesome how well all the communications folks in Orange County work together. I'll talk to Kat about something. Meanwhile, I've had a meeting with mayors and chair, and they're talking to their communications people, and they all communicate quickly. And sometimes within an hour, we get up consistent messages throughout the county. And so I think that's worked out really well too. So let's hear from others. Jackie, Barbara, and then whoever else. Susan.
Thank you. Kat, you said that one of the reasons that we did so well in the pandemic was communications. But I want to particularly say that you were one of the reasons why we've done so well during the communications. Your creativity and heartfelt enthusiasm just spills out. You're taking us to a whole new level. And I know that as you're reaching out to communities like the people who live in the manufactured housing communities, that you're not doing that because it's part of your job, although it is. You're doing it because your heart's there. And that really comes through. And I think I speak for all of us when I say how fortunate we are to have you, particularly to have you right now. So thanks for all you've done.
Thank you so much, Council Member.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Barbara, and then Susan.
Yeah, my comments are brief. I agree with everything that Councilmember Gist just said. You're doing an absolutely amazing job. You elevated our town communications to you really leveling us up. Okay, level up. So just really proud of your work to make us more inclusive as it relates to town communications. Town communications is so important, as we want community members to have access to our resources and our services and to know about our events. And you're just really hitting the mark, everywhere. And I appreciate you, and you're sensitive. to race and culture and religion. And I've seen how you just kind of handle that in what I consider like a really appropriate way. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. And the only comment that I would have, or the ask, is I do think that there is, and you mentioned it, that there probably is a need for a few more neighborhood information centers, which you say you were already going to evaluate. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Susan, then Randy.
Yes, thank you, Lydia. And Catherine, there's no way I could speak any more eloquently than Jackie or Barbara in terms of sharing our appreciation for your role as our communications director. So I just really appreciate you. I appreciate your work that you're doing, especially this last year during the pandemic. I have a couple questions for you. The telling of the stories. Very much I can tell it's something that resonates from you, and certainly during the pandemic, it's a time of amazing stories to be shared. It's been a time of true perseverance, whether it's a small business owner or somebody living in a senior center, somebody, a student who's been going through virtual schooling. I mean, it's just one person after another has persevered. I'm wondering how would you like to do more of that storytelling through social media? And if so, how can we help you in terms of getting those stories shared?
Thank you. I've actually observed in the plan, after digging into it, that it is very much focused on engagement, but the communication area, if you look closely, one of the action items that might be missing is really storytelling. The actual act of creating stories. Yes, I would like to do more, and it's been a little bit challenging. Just, when I start working on systems and gathering data and things like this, it's just a capacity issue at times where I have to carve out the time to do them. And I think what's really interesting about engagement is that, if a social media post doesn't receive engagement, you can tell yourself that maybe they're not seeing it or there's some kind of algorithm. But moreover, I see that our residents just weren't interested in that story or that photo, and it is really clear, because then when we put out something that connects with their values and connects with their sense of community character, it skyrockets. So it's really beautiful to manage your channels because the engagement is so high. And I haven't answered your question yet, but that's actually one of the reasons why I shared that comparison report. Because while some of your numbers are a little bit low, when you look at the number of followers, the percentage overall of engagement, even though your follower number seems lower, engagement proportionally is much higher than average. So anyway, it's really fun and they're so positive. People are just really positive here. And in terms of stories, I think we have to be careful to really focus on organizational stories that are really town of Carrboro centric. So, I would love to do a story on a local resident, but how does that connect exactly with the town? If that resident is an example of someone who has received a service or who was involved in a program that tells a larger story, I think that would make sense, and I would always try to find that angle. But yes, it's on my radar. And as soon as we get some of these systems a little bit better organized, I think you're going to see more storytelling. That's really what I want to do. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, it does. And I hope when you get to that point, you'll let us know about people that we may know who have that really interesting human story that also connects to Carrboro programs and services, and maybe we can help share some of those names and encourage that engagement. I have just one other question. I'm really so excited about these information centers. And I know that there are, as you mentioned, right now there's information centers in 2 of our manufactured home parks. But there's not an information center in either Calvander or Homestead Acres. I know that there are fewer people living there, which is imagine why there's not one there. But I was wondering if there would be a possibility of putting information centers there. And I asked that because I think it was Barbara last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the manufactured home centers, and Barbara had this brilliant idea of trying to get a resident in manufactured homes and who's living in a manufactured home park, perhaps sitting on our affordable housing advisory commission, especially as we're doing strategy around helping people stay in these parks. And so all of this is to say, has there been thought about trying to get information centers into all 4 of the manufactured home parks, and also using those as opportunities to advertise for openings on our advisory boards and advisory commissions?
I can speak with Rebecca Buzzard on that question, and see what she has to say. I'm open to putting them wherever they make sense. If we have funds for them. I think they're going well. I would like to survey the residents to kind of get an understanding of whether the information that we're posting is of interest, and but yes, and we actually have also kind of looked at existing mail rooms that are inside, or could be retrofitted a little bit with maybe some tacking board. So we don't necessarily need to build message centers in every apartment complex location. In some areas, we may be able to make some other approaches. But I think kind of going old school and going back to paper and non-digital is really exciting to me. I think I think it'll be interesting to see how these are received.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you for those suggestions.
Yes, take good care.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks, Susan. Before I go on to Randy, I just wanted to say I really liked your information about posting flyers, Kat. I thought that was really just all the guidance to give people as they think through how to post flyers. That was awesome. Let's go to Randy, and then I think maybe I've just seen Sammy to Randy.
Kat, awesome work. I can't even wrap my mind around the fact it's only been 1 year, and in the middle of a pandemic, and what you've been able to not only launch from the town's perspective, but how you have engaged each and every one of us to promote different outreach throughout this year. And it all had to be done virtually. I'm even thinking back to the first time I saw you in person. So it's like, it's really been an amazing year. And when you talk about the number of followers possibly being low, all I think about, is during a pandemic, that's like one of the toughest times to really get launched. But the fact that the engagement is strong is a great indication of the desire of the community to be engaged this way. So I think there's a very bright horizon to look at. I want to mention 2 things that came to my mind when I looked at the material. One is whether or not there's a way to engage with Chief Schmidt and Emergency Services and Chief ATAC on some kind of Carrboro alerts so that when some things are coming up, we can push the information out so folks are aware. And I say this because I have seen interactive boards, to say the least, where folks can get information and it would be directly tied to the website. So, for example, possibly piloting an interactive board at for example, Pine Grove. I just walked up to Pine Grove's kiosk the other day, and it occurred to me that may be something that's of interest or that's possible, and just being able to tie it together, because as we're working towards community safety and law enforcement being more interactive with the community, I just think this concept of a Carrboro alerts is would be worth looking at. That's number one. Number two, of course, as an educator, I love the importance of individual stories and the idea of generating the connection through community through stories. And I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity to connect with the school district, Chapel Hill High School and Carrboro High School journalism classes to see if high school students would be interested in doing stories to capture some of those resident stories that tell the larger stories that get to the community character and values. So I just put that out there because I know that a neighbor of mine is a educator at Chapel Hill High School and works with students on there. I think the Chapel Hill High School is the Proconian. And I just put it out there because I know students are very much interested in journalism and would love to learn the ropes, especially from someone as talented as yourself. So thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you for those suggestions. They sound really good. I think they're great, and I will get back to you about them.
All right, thanks, Randy. And Sammy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for everything, Catherine. You like everyone has said, you've been doing an amazing job. Even the presentation is and the materials you presented today to us were so thorough. You really are doing an amazing job. Thank you. And I really like Randy's suggestion of working with the neighborhood, high school newspapers as interns and connecting with them. A lot of I remember the Chapel High School Proconian was really high quality, and to whatever degree they might benefit from collaborating and vice versa, I think that's a great idea. I heard you mention the council email archive, and I was wondering where that is because I don't know where it is. Can you?
It's accessible from the council webpage.
Okay.
It gets in the right-hand column.
And is that the one that public email gets archived when we email that? Okay, I accessed it a long time ago, but I think it was when it was like Google Docs and totally hidden. I'm glad to know it's more accessible. Then you'd mentioned a survey of kiosks, and I was wondering if in that survey you might include a question that asks residents, survey of residents near kiosks. I think that's what you mean, or what you said. If you could include a question asking them about their internet access. I think there is an opportunity on the horizon, given the federal funds that we are going to be receiving. There's a big chunk of that which is encouraged to be used towards broadband access. And we have already a precedent of using our broadband backbone to provide free broadband to CASA, the new development, affordable housing. And in that conversation, I'd be interested in knowing kind of what qualitatively people's access is in some of these affordable housing sites, and for us to be thinking about making a map of where, relative to our broadband backbone, where there's a need for broadband, as we may be able to leverage some of these funds for that purpose. And this crosses with, well, the technology we've been laying out over the years, but also it touches on affordable housing to the extent that it represents utilities that people pay money for, and we could be offsetting for them. But obviously during the pandemic, we saw how essential broadband is for people in those kinds of situations to access, well, for a lot of kids, school, just generally. But as a communication opportunity too, beyond the kiosks, it would be a good thing to expand. The other thing I've been interested in us doing over many years is providing access to our council agenda in a very prominent place. And I've always thought of that corner of Greensboro and Weaver Street, the town parking lot in that little park. We could include either a kiosk, or it could be as simple as a mailbox that you raise the flag when our agenda is available, to make it really accessible for people to know what it is we do and what decisions we're doing. There may also be an opportunity. I mean, maybe that could be done before the library is done. Maybe the library would be another place for including in the lobby. I think Chapel Hill Library does that for their agenda. But also a comment box in the library would be good for people to have an opportunity to drop in whatever, and then we could get updates monthly, or depending on how often it gets used, a summary of what those are. Those are the main things that come to mind. I'm very grateful for the inclusivity aspect of your plan, and I think that's essential for us to really up our game in making participation in town government and democracy generally, and information so essential in making that happen. And it's true, like we've been trying to compensate from the loss of our newspapers. I don't think I mean, when we had the Carrboro Citizen, it was just so amazing to walk into town and run into everyone, and everyone knew what we were doing. And I think only a newspaper could really accomplish that. But in lieu of that, I think you're doing an excellent job. And so look forward to the continued progression, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Sammy. Barbara, your hand is up. Is that up again? Is that a new comment? And then Randy, your hand is still up. Is that from earlier? Okay, it's up from earlier. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with what Sammy was just saying about our agenda and its availability and visibility. And so I just kind of wanted to throw in our town parks, as other locations to maybe, and that's a great idea, Sammy, because, I used to love the Carrboro Citizen, so that was I love the Carrboro Citizen. And the Sammy said, it's just really important, that folks know, what we're doing. And I know you're doing the best you can, Catherine, as far as pushing it out online and stuff, but certainly physically in some of these other places that we mentioned, that we know that folks congregate, that would also be helpful. And thank you again.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good comments. Thanks a lot, Kat. You're really appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure and my honor. And yeah, so it's been fun. It's a challenge at times, but it's never dull, and it's very interesting, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you very much for your feedback. I really appreciate it.
And awesome. Before you go, Catherine, you're also just amazingly easy to work with. If you're recording or filming, I mean, you just really easy. Your patience and attention to detail, and everything. So just really, really good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I agree. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the report. It was really interesting too. So All right, council members, we're at the end of our meeting. And so let's have a motion to go into closed session by Randy.
Second.
Second by Sammy.
Wait, Lydia, I have a
Yes.
matter for council.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, so just very quickly, I had sent Lydia and David and John an email because based on council and the Economic Sustainability Commission discussions recently, I'd like the council to consider a retreat on economic development. And some of the areas, and I'm just going to give you the short list of things that are of interest to discuss are downtown redevelopment, downtown development groups or corporations, formalizing a category for the non-traditional entrepreneurial enterprises, advocating the establishment of a Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Hillsborough, Orange County partnered, funded a Black business coordinator position, and the old 86 property for economic development that we had started to look at a couple of years ago. So, there are several really important items, and the reason why I'm stressing this now is that I'd like us to have a proactive conversation, so we have fleshed out some of our thinking regarding economic development ahead of comprehensive plan considerations, ahead of a new manager, so that we feel that we have done some homework and we have come to some agreement on baseline about some of these items. So, I'm looking at maybe an hour or two, and I would love to see that we could do this, before the end of July. So that's my request.
I guess I'll just give my response, and also because this wasn't on the agenda, I don't want us to spend extended time on it. People can think about it and we can respond back to each other. But my thinking is, I know we've got a pretty darn full plate through the end of June, and then David's leaving at the end of July. So my thinking is all of those are really awesome, great topics. In my view, those would be better undertaken with our new person at the helm to kind of hear where we're talking about all of those, in the fall, not in July when David's out the door. That's just my preliminary thoughts. I don't know if anyone else wants to pop in right now, but we can also email with each other and then kind of bring this up again, maybe, next meeting or something. Let's go to Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. I support you in that. I sent you all an email today. I hadn't heard back from anybody yet about an idea that I proposed a couple years ago that I want us to revisit. We had looked at economic development on the old 86 property, and the county had not agreed with that use of land. I want to bring it back. I've outlined it for you. This is a slightly different version, and Randy and I have talked about it. I would like to create kind of a entrepreneurial village that could give preference to people of color. And it would provide both moderate income housing as well as shared workspace and an entrepreneurial information center that would be open to everybody. We could partner with Community Home Trust, with Self-Help Credit Union, and with Empowerment, along with some other entities. So I'd like to ask you all to please read my email, and I would support revisiting this next week under matters by the council. So I'm going to bring
Jackie.
it up.
Yeah, thanks. I did glance at yours quickly, but I knew you were going to bring it up next week, so that's why I didn't bring it up. So I guess I would ask council members think through what Randy said, think through what Jackie said. We can, my suggestion is we bring this up under matters by council members at the end of the meeting next week. If Mr. Manager, what does our agenda look like next week? And do you have any response to this?
Okay, just one sec. I think it's well, next week is the 25th, so you've got your closed session.
Yep.
So we don't really have, next week we don't really have a meeting, y'all. It would be in 2 weeks. So, because next week, so it would be, we're talking June 1.
Yeah, I think June 1 would be, if you had maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes, we could slot that in.
Okay, how about?
I'd appreciate that. I feel like we've been sitting on a great opportunity for way too long, and the face of the county has changed, and maybe we can move forward.
So, Mr. Manager, would you mind under matters by council members, just go ahead and list, previous suggestion by Randy and Jackie for us to kind of talk about, and that'll be good too, because Damon will be back too. So
yeah, we'll do that. No problem.
Okay.
And Lydia, I'm going to need to check and see if June 1st I'm available. I may not be available on June 1st, but I will let you know. I will send an email as soon as I can get it verified.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Let David know, let Kathy know too.
I will. And
right.
I will send the entire council what I sent you today, plus that follows up, so they can see what I sent to you earlier.
Kind of a summary of what you just said, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Let's have a motion to go into closed session, y'all.
So moved.
Motion by Barbara, second by Randy. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Barbara? Aye. Me? Aye. Jackie?
Aye.
And Susan?
Aye.
Okay. All right. We'll wait until Mary gives us